According to the press reports, the Office of Special Counsel found a sufficient amount of evidence to investigate possible White House violations of the Hatch Act. And part of this investigation involves a presentation you gave at GSA headquarters with the permission of the head of GSA when she asked the attendees how they could help our candidates. May 16th, Duane was notified that she had violated the Hatch Act. 6 GSA employees have provided information about your GSA presentation. So could you tell us how many such political briefings have you conducted for executive agencies and federal employees during your service in the White House?
Senator, I don't know an exact number, but I think it's roughly 10 or a few more perhaps.
Can you provide us the information where they
Yes, sir.
Did you conduct 2 briefings at USAID last fall?
I remember conducting 1 briefing at USAID last fall.
And what was the purpose of the briefing?
The purpose of the political briefing was to thank political appointees for their service. It's a morale-boosting tool, and they are informative for them.
Do you create the substance of these briefings? You yourself? Do you create all of the material?
The content of the briefing, Senator, is not typically produced by me. No, sir.
Can you tell us who else is involved in those projects?
The White House political director is typically involved in those projects.
Who in particular?
During my service, Ms. Sarah Taylor.
Anyone else?
There may be other staffers at the White House involved in the back and forth discussions.
Mr. Rove involved in any of those meetings?
I don't have any specific recollection of seeing Mr. Rove, but I'm not sure I can answer your question based on what I currently know.
Were you aware of the Hatch Act prohibitions against political activity?
Yes, sir, I'm aware of the Hatch Act.
Did you ever question whether this type of briefing violated the Act's prohibitions?
It's my understanding that this kind of briefing has been occurring for several years and across many administrations, and that many people had decided it does not violate the Hatch Act.
Well, you asked someone for guidance then whether this violated the Hatch Act or did not. You know?
I didn't specifically ask someone whether
Did anybody tell you it didn't? Did anybody tell you you could do it? What was your answer?
Senator, regarding the briefings themselves, it's my understanding that in many cases they are cleared by the White House counsel, and I think that's my understanding is it's a regular practice.
Well, part of the investigation into this involves a presentation you gave at GSA headquarters with the permission of the head of GSA when she asked the attendees how they could help our candidates. How they could help our candidates. What do you feel? Do you feel that that is how we help our political candidates? Do you think that goes over the line?
I think that there is as I understand it, the Office of Special Counsel has submitted a report to the President based on his investigation, and there is a pending presidential decision. And I'm not sure it would be appropriate for me to comment on a pending presidential decision based on his investigation.
Well, this kind of activity is outside of the executive privilege that Mr. Fielding has sent. This kind of activity, so you ought to be able to respond to these questions.
Senator, perhaps it would be helpful for me to tell you what I told the special counsel when he investigated this matter earlier this year, and which is I simply don't recall Ms. Doan making the comment she is alleged to have made at the time. I know others testified that they did. I simply didn't recall it.
All right. Well, let me ask you, did you advise attendees on how to elect Republican candidates and advance Republican issues?
No, sir.
And did you discuss specific candidates?
Specific candidates may have been discussed in the context of forecasting the political landscape of the next cycle.
And you discussed congressional districts?
Some congressional districts may have been discussed, yes, sir.
And you don't know whether those candidates you discussed were Republicans?
I know that both Republicans and Democrats may have come up in the meeting.
Did you, as the deputy director, did you ever seek clearance for these briefings?
As the deputy director, I knew that the director had come up with a process to seek clearance for the briefings.
Have you had similar exchanges at other briefings in federal buildings?
Similar exchanges?
Yes, briefings in federal buildings. I think earlier in the response you said you thought 10 or 12 different briefings. Did they take place all in federal buildings?
Some took place in agency buildings and some took place in the executive office building.
Did you, as a former, and I'll just wind up, Mr. Chairman, you've been as a former state campaign manager for President Bush and a number of Republican candidates, do you ever feel your briefings would help Republican candidates?
I've felt my briefings would help boost the morale of appointees and serve to thank them for their service to the President and give them information about the political landscape in which they were trying to enact the President's agenda.
What really purpose, other than overt political activity, could these briefings possibly have served?
Senator, I consider these briefings, and I know others do as well, to be great morale boosters for political appointees who are out toiling in the vineyards and doing good public service on behalf of the President's agenda. And I know we consider them to be good morale boosters, good ways to thank people and to show them that the White House really did appreciate their service as presidential administration appointees.
And the Hatch Act, you never felt that you were over the line in terms of violating the Hatch Act?
No, sir. In fact, we took great strides to make sure we weren't, including reminding appointees during the middle of some of these briefings that if they ever felt like they were going to be involved in anything political, to check with their agency's counsel to make sure they did what was appropriate.
But you didn't feel you had to check with your counsel?
I've gotten repeated briefings on the Hatch Act from White House counsel.
And they told you your kind of briefings were okay?
I don't recall in those briefings that these specific meetings you're questioning me about were covered in those briefings that I referenced.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.